Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be upgrading the storage in my studio desktop. Okay everyone, so if you recall, back in June of 2021, I did a build on my studio desktop and I showed you guys through 2 different videos how I put that system together and configured everything. Well, today I'm actually upgrading the SSDs and I'm doing the Samsung Evo 980 Pro. It's an M.2 SSD, and I'm doing 2 of those, 2 terabyte each. And I'm also adding an additional SSD. This is a SATA SSD, so the throughput's going to be a little bit slower, about 500 megabyte, give or take, per second, versus what these M.2 SSDs can do. But this is 4 terabyte, so I'm doing that. Now, in my video where I did the build, I told you that I transferred the SSDs from a previous system. So the M.2s that I currently have in there are the Samsung Evo Plus 970s. And so these are going to be quite a bit more performance, and these are the professional models. So these should hopefully perform a lot better. The Pluses, the 970 Pluses did good, but these are the next step up. So what I'm going to do in this video is first I'm going to do an unboxing of all these SSDs, show you what's in the boxes. Then I'm going to put my studio desktop here on the table and I'm going to install them. Hey, quick reminder folks, remember to hit that thumbs up as it helps others find quality content on YouTube and allows us to continue to make videos like this for you. Click on subscribe and then hit the bell so you get notified anytime we add new content. Okay everyone. So I'm going to go through this pretty quick. First we have the Samsung 980 Pro, the PCIe 4.0 NVMe M.2 SSD. Try to say that 3 times fast. Up to 7,000 megabyte a second. This is the 2 terabyte variety. And on the back you can see it says unstoppable speed and all that fun stuff. Now, I actually got this for $199 directly off of the Samsung website, and it's actually come down in price quite a bit because the 990 has been released. So let's see what this has inside. And we can see we have the drive itself. This is the variety with the heatsink, so this is a little bit extra to get the model with the heatsink installed directly from Samsung. And we have the booklet, of course. Then we have the device itself. And if I take this out of here, when I installed the 970 Evos, they actually have a stick-on heatsink. This is so much better directly from Samsung. You can see that it completely surrounds the entire M.2 SSD. And it has vents in the top, vents in here, and it just feels really substantial. It feels like a real quality piece of hardware. So I'm real excited to get this in the system. And the other M.2 SSD I have is going to be identical, so I'm not going to show that because it'll just be the same thing I just showed you. The next thing we have is the Crucial MX500. Now, I've had a couple of these in previous systems. This is a 4 terabyte SSD. This is a 2.5-inch SATA, so this is only going to have about 500 megabyte a second throughput, but it's still going to be really, really good compared to a traditional hard drive. And you can see this is the box. I've taken it out already, but we have the drive itself in this plastic container. And when I open the container up, really basic, I just have the drive itself. You can see here. Okay. And then I have the little booklet, the little Crucial SSD booklet. Then I have this little bracket here that I can use. And that's pretty much it. Okay everyone, so I'm going to try to show you as best I can. Of course this cover is on, so let me get that off. Let's try to show you inside of the system. Now we have a very large GeForce RTX 3090 in here, so will be a little bit difficult to see some things. Now, you should probably be able to see on your screen the first slot is right here in front of the graphics card. It says M.2 PCIe 4.0. The second one is here in the back. And in order to get that off, I'm going to need to remove one of my PCI Express cards. So let me see if I can show you here. Swing this around. Show you what the inside of the system looks like there. Okay, so here we have the system. You can see that one of my M.2 SSDs is here, the other one is over here. The heat sinks that you see on there are actually the heat sinks that came with the motherboard. I'm going to put my gloves on because I don't like to get oil on any internal parts of the system. Always like to use my nitrile gloves. So I'm going to start out by taking my Elgato card out of here. And now you can see I have access to both of my SSDs. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go after this one first. And I'm just going to loosen these screws here a bit. And these heat sinks were kind of stick on, so I'm going to try to pop them off of there. Those are the heat sinks that came with the motherboard. And in here you can see my 970 Evo Plus. Just going to turn that, pull that out. Here's what we're taking out. We'll also take this one out over here. Okay, just going to pop this one off as well. You can see the same thing. Not a bad heatsink, but not as effective as the Samsung 980 factory installed heatsink is going to be. And the nice thing about this particular motherboard, this Creator motherboard, is I don't have to put a screw down here in the end. I just flip this plastic switch and it releases the M.2 SSD. So you can see what I have here. I had a 1 terabyte in that slot, and this slot had a 2 terabyte 970 Evo Plus. So now that we've got both of those out of the way, let's go ahead and install the new hardware, and I'll show you just how easy this is. Okay, so I'm going to take my first Samsung 980 Pro out, and this just feels like a very substantial piece of hardware. I really like the quality of it. And we can see that I have my 2 new SSDs installed. Now, the last part of this is I'm going to install my 2.5-inch SSD. Now, this particular case that I have, and I'll link to the other video where I did the build so you can see the case that I'm using, the motherboard that I'm using, all the components that I'm using. But in this particular case, these are my 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drive holders. So I'm just going to undo this screw here to release this so that I can get it out and mount my drive to it. Okay, so now that I've got the screw loose, just going to push down on this, and I need to be able to pull this out. It's kind of magnetically held in there a little bit. Okay, and this is what I've got when I pull that out. And you can see this is kind of designed to go that way. The magnets hook into the bottom, so we want this to come up towards the top, and then the SATA connections will come over on the other side. Now you could always mount it towards the bottom, but there's not going to be a whole lot of room there for the SATA cables to get down there. So I like to come up and over with the SATA cables. Now the nice thing is I saved my motherboard box, and in there I have some mounting screws. I also have 2 SATA cables that came with the motherboard, one of which I'm going to use here for this. This is how our drive's going to look when it's installed. I'm just going to tighten these down. Don't over tighten these because it will strip out the holes on the drive. Just one enough to secure it. This is not a heavy drive, so we don't need a whole lot of force. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to stick my SATA cable into the board ahead of time, because once I get that bracket back in there, it'll make it a little bit harder. And I'm just going to install my SATA cable. Now it says ports 1 and 2 are over here on the right hand side, so I want to try to get that in there. This is always a challenge when you're installing this after the fact, because you don't have as much room in the system. So we've got that in there. So let's go ahead and put this back in. And I'm just going to put these 2 tabs up here. And I'll try to move this cable out of the way. Doesn't want to cooperate there. Okay. Got that back in place. That's secure. We'll put our 2 screws back in here to hold this. They don't need to be super tight. They're not holding a lot of weight. And see, I have everything here. I want to keep everything out of the way of this SSD. I don't want anything over top of the heatsink there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do in a moment here, I'm going to neatly zip tie this all together. The last thing we'll also need to do is we'll need to supply power to this drive. So I'm going to need to connect to my power supply for some SATA power. Now this is not absolutely necessary, but I'm kind of a little bit OCD with my internals of my case. So I'm going to put this little zip tie on. And the right direction here. I'll put this on here just to keep this cable neat and tidy. Okay everyone, so now we're on the other side of the case. Because I didn't already have a SATA device, I have to add on my power supply for SATA. If you are doing something like this and you already have SATA power supply, you're not going to have to do this, but because I didn't, I have to. So I'm going to take the other side of the case off so I can access the power supply, and I want to route my SATA power up through the bottom of the case. I'm just going to set this aside here very carefully. And in here we can see all of my cable management. Now this doesn't look very pretty, but it doesn't have to, because you don't see this from the other side of the case. This is all hidden behind. So I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to add my modular SATA power supply in here. So I think, folks, what I'm going to do here, because it's very tight and very difficult to get in here, I'm actually going to loosen the screws up on my power supply here, try to tilt it up a little bit so I can more easily access the port that I need to plug into. So I think what I'm going to try to do, folks, is try to lift this power supply out of here a little bit so that I can easily plug that in. It's going to be a lot easier to do it that way than to try to somehow wiggle that port down into there. And while I'm here, just make sure all my other cables are properly seated so we don't have any power issues. And I think we're good. I'm going to get back down in here, resecure my power supply. Okay, now I have my power supply secured and I'm ready to route my SATA here, but I'm just going to open up my cable management here once more. So to get to my SATA drive, I need to go through right here. Now, what I'm going to do is expose this side again momentarily. And for the sake of keeping this looking good, I'm not going to pull all those cables through. Now I'm going to go to this side and I'm going to organize everything again. I don't think I'm going to need more than two, but my primary objective is to keep the other side where my glass panel goes on the side. I want to keep that other side as pretty as possible, and the way that I do that is to put all the ugly wires over on this side. Okay, folks, so here we are back on the prettier side, and I'm just going to snip the end off of this wire tie, and just for good measure I'm going to put one more zip tie in here just to keep this neat. And there we go, folks. This thing is ready to be closed back up. I'm ready to get started and install the OS on these drives and start using the system. Okay, everyone, so here we're going to take a look at some of the performance benchmarks of the drives after they were installed. Have you or are you considering upgrading your system? Let's start a conversation down in the comments section below. As always, folks, like, subscribe, hit the bell, and thanks for watching.